Hey you, I'm Ali Amo, and this is the Lease on Life podcast. I wasn't really sure how I was going to go about this episode because there are two ways I could go about it. I've called it Who is Your Leader because instinctively you will go into thinking what I'm talking about based on your perception of the meaning behind what I'm saying. I considered titling it instead, Who Leads You? But then you will immediately have your ego most likely take over and it will convince you that it's you who leads you. But what we're going to uncover is just how little of the time you're actually leading yourself into what you're going into, and you're being led by people, places, and things that are largely out of your control in its direction. So, the way we're going to go through this is by using the 8 fundamental elements inside my Web of Life philosophy. So, we're looking at beliefs and history, which is the time strand. We're looking at relationships and environment, which is the foundation strand. We're looking at energy and science, which is the power strand. And we're also looking at childhood and experiences, which is the super strand. This is merely a suggestive list to get you thinking. It's not by any means an exhaustive list. And the intention behind this episode is to get you to start reflecting in real time about the content that you're consuming, about the things you're reading, you're watching, you're listening to, and not just the content itself, but the provider of the content and the legitimacy of the information that you're getting. Ultimately, you have that self-leadership and your own discernment. You decide what you believe or what you think or how you feel. But often it's what you're exposing yourself to that determines the duality of thought, that you can agree or you can disagree. What you feel, you're not largely in control of, because if an algorithm, for example, is feeding you certain content, it's determining how you will feel or that you will feel, either this or that kind of thing. And if you're ever looking at the comments of under any video that you ever see, or just discourse that you might experience through something like Reddit, you get different opinions, but you can see there's a lot of emotionally charged responses to things. So we're going to start with beliefs. Who is your leader in regards to media? Now, when I say media, I don't mean the social media. I mean the information that informs you about world events, current events, whether that be for your country or for scientific discoveries and developments, for events that have taken place, whether they be criminal activity or whatnot. Where is the source that you're getting your media from? Because oftentimes when you, for example, in Australia, a lot of people aren't actually aware that media companies there's a bit of a monopoly. And we've just recently been told that the two major media companies are merging into one. So the group that decides what is going to be media now has a complete monopoly, and it will be run by one particular organization, and then that information is disseminated across all media channels on television, for example, but also the journalism for mainstream media. So my question to you is, who is your leader in media? Are you still following mainstream media, or are you going to something like social media to get your information? And when you go to social media for your information, like I myself do, this made me start thinking myself, actually. Can you actually name the people who you get your media from? So on TikTok, there's someone named Dylan Page. And what I like about him myself is that he often reports on things long before any mainstream media channels will report on them if they end up covering them at all. So something like protests, for example, is not so much covered by mainstream media, whereas he looks into that not exclusively, but extensively, and goes into a lot more depth than most mainstream media channels go into. But then on any given day, the algorithm on whatever social media channels that you are consuming content on, the algorithm's feeding you. So if, for example, at the moment, the 3AI Atlas, or is it 3I Atlas? This space experience that is unusual, something we've never experienced before. The information coming in on that, if I'd watch one video, even if it wasn't to completion, with one person's perspective or one person's reporting on what NASA is saying, it will then feed me 6 to 10 other ones in the course of the algorithm with different perspectives and different theories or ideas or people's beliefs being, they say projected, but definitely inflicted upon me to then discern what I believe and what I don't. And ultimately, I know we all don't know what that is. We don't know what it is. We don't know. So it's all conjecture at this point. But I'm realizing that I can't say that I lead myself in terms of media and any kind of content I consume, because it's the algorithm that is depicting or deciding, what I'm being fed, not me going out and individually seeking information on any given topic. And when you do try to zoom in and search on YouTube or search on Instagram, search wherever, whatever tech digital platform you're exploring, you don't know the validity of what you're being presented, because the likelihood that you will go into the person who is delivering that content to you and look into what their credentials are or whatever is slim to none, or even to do your own research into the claims that are being made. And this comes into play more so with a lot of the other things we're looking at in the belief section. So the next big thing, since we're talking about social media, are influencers. Who influences you? Who is the lead influencer in your world, in your life, in your experience? Because we know they can influence you to buy certain things just because their name's on it or because they are promoting it. We know you can be influenced into thinking certain things and believing certain things. And this is, I think, important when it comes to health and beauty. And if we look at beauty just for a second as an example, like skincare and hair care, in the same doom scroll situation, if you're looking at skincare and healthcare, for example, you'll be fed a series of conflicting perspectives. And one person will try to influence you to believe Korean skincare is the way to go. And the next person will tell you that Korean skincare will be the death of your skin. And same goes with hair care. You'll hear masks are the answer. Masks made me lose all my hair. So you're constantly being influenced on various sides, but also conflicting ones. And then it's kind of up to you to determine where you will lead. But is it really up to you in the first place? Because at any given time, you can go online off the social media platforms and look into products that you're interested in using or buying, or even researching just the ingredients of. So influencers have a role. Half the time, you'll be thinking something or believing something about form of health and beauty, but you don't even know the person who gave you the information. And yeah, you might get a dermatologist, or you might get, I can't remember the name of it, but it's like dermatology, but not just scalp health. It's like hair health. Or you'll get hairdressers, but you don't remember who they are. You don't know who they are. You haven't had any personal interaction with them. And the level of education that you get also is dependent on that person's validity, credibility, authority in a specific area. So if we go out of the world events and journalism, like who is the leader in journalism for you? It might come into play when it comes to health because we're talking more mental and emotional health. So speaking of the current events and the news and all of that sort of stuff, Candace Owens is not someone that I've ever explicitly followed. I've seen her content pop up over the years and I know her name, but it wasn't until all of these perspectives about Charlie Kirk's assassination come into play that I started giving Candace Owens a lot more energetic airtime in my life. And I see what she's doing and how she's going about it as one of the leaders sort of in journalism compared to the mainstream media in my country at least, but also it made me start to think about where Dylan Page, who's big on TikTok, is getting his information from, and also the surface level application of his information dissemination. He'll give maybe a 1 to 2 minute session on what's going on, for example, in Nepal overthrowing their government, but he just gives you a bit of an overarching idea of what's happening. He doesn't really go too in depth about anything. So he's getting his information from an undisclosed location. I do notice, though, he does report on things that mainstream media either doesn't or very rarely will do later on in the piece, not while it's actually happening. Sorry. His is a lot more immediate, but his level of journalism is in no way, shape, or form at the level of Candace Owens. Now, even me saying this stuff to you, talking about these people, you may have had experience listening to them or being exposed to them and had your own beliefs. And this is the whole point about leadership. Who is leading this conversation is me. Who's leading your own decision making about it is you. But if you then go out of your way to go look up Candace Owens and listen to what she's saying and what she's showing in terms of Charlie Kirk's assassination and her research into questioning the mainstream story, then who's leading who? You know what I mean? And this is what I mean. We don't look into the leadership, into where we're giving our focus, where we're giving our attention. And this is on things that don't necessarily affect us personally, I'd say, in the world events category. Global conflicts, politics, they do influence us and our lives, but US politics is the content that I'm being shown repeatedly. And yes, it does affect our economy and our lives here in Australia, but ultimately, all of these sorts of things determine the beliefs that you hold about the current state of the world. So you come to the perspective that you have about the state of the world based on the content that you're shown, and how you interpret that is largely influenced by the perspective of others. So say, for example, I come out straight off the bat and said, the person that I believe is the ultimate journalist and the only media that I believe when I consume it is Candace Owens. It's then on you to either agree with that, to challenge that, or to question that and then go do your own exploration. But your own exploration will largely be to just consume her content and then discern for yourself whether you agree with some of the claims she makes or not, or otherwise. But to go into research levels that you'd about her as a person to understand her background is another level. And this is the point. We don't often lead ourselves into exploring these individuals that we follow. Therefore, they are leading us. This is the whole point. The people you follow are ultimately leading you. And where are they leading you? Why are they leading you? How are they leading you? And at what level do you take on that self-leadership and start to look into, question and research, yourself? So if we go, beliefs are connected to history by time, but if we look at history for a moment, yes, they are beliefs, but they have deep historical narratives embedded within them is religion. So again, my contents are largely coming from social media as opposed to mainstream, but religion and spirituality. Who is leading you? How are you being led? And who are the people that are leading you? Do you know who they are? Who has led your perspective of religion? Mine's come from my nonna, and she's a staunch Christian, Catholic specifically, and being that her sister was a nun at the Vatican, Catholicism runs deep. I've said this before in other podcast episodes, but her interpretation of the Bible has been shared with me for so long. But I'm not actually Catholic. I'm baptized Greek Orthodox, just raised Roman Catholic. But my own perception of religion has come from a lot of my own exploration. And the same goes when it comes to spirituality. You might be on both parts of that spectrum, or you might lean like I do towards one side more than the other, and that's definitely spirituality for me. But I think, who is my leader in terms of spirituality? That's when it gets really interesting, because I'm thinking of all the countless sources of information, most of which I can't name. I've also, just on this podcast alone, explored spirituality in terms of people who have energetic and spiritual gifts. They have also informed my perspective and expanded it largely, because I had a very limited and narrow understanding of the gifts that people have. And one gift is not experienced in the same way. So even just exploring the experiences of people with these gifts and just how they live their lives and how they operate. I see a lot of them in the wild now too. It's like I'm naturally drawing them to me or something. But if you were to consider who's your leader in terms of religion, if that's the way you lean, or spirituality, who would those figures be? One of the big ones for me is, what's his name? There's Bruce Lipton, Joe Dispenza, and the third guy. Oh my God, I can't even remember his name. It'll come to me later. But it's actually the third guy who leads me. So it's funny that the other two are the names that I remember. Bruce Lipton is more in the science side of things. Greg Braden, that's it. Greg Braden, because he's explored history and ancient history and tribes of the world, and his understanding of spirituality has come from what he's learned and has been repeated by different groups around the world. So he's a big leader for me. And I kind of eat what he says and digest it, and I would then quickly regurgitate it because I give him the credibility, the authority, and he's a leader for me in that regard. But it might be somebody different to you, and I'd like you to consider who that is and how much you've looked into them as a person and how you've given them the authority to lead you and for you to follow them. We've also got history with economy, understanding even just capitalism. And there's a lot of people who are, fringe might be the wrong word, but people who are outside of the primary people that are given the platforms because they are economists or whatever. If you look at historians talking about economy, it's a very different story that you hear historically, obviously, as opposed to current economists just talking about the state of things and the percentage of things. There was something I was exposed to this morning, thanks to the algorithm, that was, I have no idea who it is. And he has led me. See what I mean? He was comparing the statistical data on the Great Depression and the percentage of your weekly wage to pay for housing, to pay for an automobile, and to pay for food. And the percentages compared to now, and how we're basically in a far greater depression than the Great Depression itself. And I agreed with it, because they had a lot less then, but everything cost a lot less then. And now we might have everything, but it cost way more than we can afford to have anything, even the basic things. I may have just led you then. I'm just realizing that. And when it comes to history, this is a big one. I sat with this for days, considering how much of Australian history was fed to me by the education system. And in Australia, our education is the Westminster system, which I call the West Sinister system. It is the colonizers who created the education that was then disseminated through education. So the story of Australian history told by the First Nations people of Australia, the Indigenous, the Aboriginal people, is a very different story to what England has decided Australian children will learn. It's starting to change now, but it's still that governing body that decides and determines what history will be shared and how it will be shared, and also the perspective that is taken for people to consume. And I remember being led to believe certain things, like Captain Cook discovered Australia, when I was in year 4. So I was about 9 or 10 years old. 9. I was turning 9. I was very young for my age, the younger in the grade. And that clicked to me to make no sense. How can somebody discover somewhere that was already inhabited by people? And that made me sit back in my chair as a child, like, what? So I was being led to have a perspective that didn't make any sense to me. And this is the problem. If you don't have that kind of critical thinking, especially as a child, but it goes all the way into adulthood, that made me question the stories that I was being told about history via education. And then how things were told to me at university was a very different ball game. Whereas I'd prefer the truth, but you have to be the one to decide what that is. And so who leads you into where you explore information and how you discern truth from, I don't even know how to classify that other word. Is it a lie if it's a perspective of somebody? You can't decide which perspective is right and which is wrong. That's for you to decide which side you align with more. But a true version of history coming from a combination of both sides would have been more accurate to depict the reality than what I was told in education. So what have you been led to believe, and by who? And it's not just my teacher's fault. This is the point. It's the people behind who are deciding what the teachers will teach. So who's leading who? You know what I mean? So you've got to think of who leads you and who is your leader, not just in terms of the self, who leads you into thinking who you are and how you are. There are a lot of people, actually, I'll wait till I get into science, which is coming next anyway, to go into that when it comes to the self. So think more in terms of the world, the global perspective. Now we're using the 3 spheres of the Web of Life philosophy. And I think history is a good time and a good place to do it. So who's determined your perspective of world history? Because chances are school or just education in general only informed a small portion of the information that you exposed yourself to or were exposed to. I'm hearing so much more coming out of individuals who've done research who then share it. But I just consider everything that the freaking algorithm feeds me. It's not me looking half the time. And even if you do look, it's the algorithm determining which videos are at the top, unless you want to scroll 17 million times to find and go through all of the videos to consider. That's crazy. The more and more I do this, just thinking about it has been exhausting because, well, frustrating is probably the right word, more so than exhausting, because the limited ability that I have to determine that I lead myself in all of this is slimming constantly. Every time I think, yeah, I decide what I believe about world history, it's like, no, because who feeds you that information and what information you're being fed is adding to that whole concept of equilibrium. So when you learn something, imagine like both of my hands meeting in the middle underneath my chin. If I know what I know, and I think I know everything, which the ego does, my hands are in line and my fingertips are touching. But the second you're introduced with information that challenges what you think you know, one hand slides up so it's like sitting near my lip. And then in order to reach equilibrium again, I need to either like level up the information and question and challenge and fill in the gaps of what I previously knew so that my fingers both meet to form a line at my lip now, or I have to do that whole cognitive dissonance where I just disbelieve it so I can stay at equilibrium, but my actual awareness is still lower because it's sitting back at my chin. Does that make sense if you can't see me on YouTube? I hope so. So if we zoom out of the time strand for a minute, because I don't want this to go for a lifetime, but that was just beliefs and history. Now we're going to go into the power strand. So we're talking science and we're talking energy. So science we'll start with. Who is your leader in terms of global climate change? Where are you getting your information? Who is leading you into information? Are you questioning people? Where are you going when you question? Because there's actually a debate about what's happening with the climate. It's not all yes. There's some no, it's not happening. It's going the other way, or it's just the same, or this keeps happening. I'm going to leave that for a moment. This one's freaking huge. AI. Technology, but AI we'll stick with for now. Who is leading your perspective on AI and what they're doing for us, for our society, for our world, for the planet? It could be argued that Sam Altman is the leader of AI, and so they are leading you because of the fact that you're engaging with it. And when I say that, it doesn't have to be ChatGPT. It could be as simple as Googling something, because it's AI that feeds you that first screen of information that you get. It's not individual links anymore until you scroll, unless you do, because it's not like guaranteed that you will. So AI is leading you, whether you like it or not, half the time. How often are you going to ChatGPT? And the jokes and the memes and these things that are making light of the fact that there are people who go to ChatGPT to answer everything. And yes, in the videos, it's like, how are you? And they have to ask ChatGPT how they are. And it shows how we're getting, I'm just going to say, not smarter. So how much are you letting AI lead you? Even just your attention span, your energy, and how much focus and effort you're putting into engaging with AI, whether it's the digital aspect, like the video side of it, or it's just the communicative aspect. You're communicating with AI. Who's leading who there? When it comes to something like psychology, for example, who is leading you? I'm 3/4 of the way through Your Body Keeps the Score, and I give him a lot of authority and credibility, and what he says has validity to me. But if I had not read that book to look at psychology and also the psychiatry, the DSM books, all of that sort of stuff, where would I be getting my information? And if you're believing just mainstream society about what it is, then I have a mental health diagnosis and I should be on medication for life. But I disagree with that. And so me doing this kind of exploration is for me to lead myself, but also I'm very conscious of who I am allowing to lead me in my exploration of mental illness. And I've also looked into the history of psychiatry, because one thing from my own personal experience in mental health, there's no connection between psychology and psychiatry when you're in the thick of it. They don't want to talk to you about what's going on in your life. They want to medicate you for whatever characteristics or behaviors you're exhibiting to the outside world. And that's me leading you again. I shouldn't do that. I'm so sorry. This was also part of the reason why I've struggled with this episode. I had a conversation with my partner, and he was of the opinion that I have to lead you into certain perspectives just for you to see how easy it is to be led. And I said, no, it's not about me just voicing my perspective, my opinion, my experience continually. It's Oh, sorry, that was my perspective. He was saying I should just ask you the question. So, who is leading you in terms of parenting? Who is leading your perspective on how to parent? What happens when you parent this way, that way, whatever? And I said, what a boring podcast episode. Like, unless I'm having a conversation with someone or people are commenting on a live stream of it in real time, it's not going to get anywhere. I have to show them how the conversation being led in a direction ultimately leads them, because they're not self-leading this conversation. But I don't want to do it so much that I'm continually leading them so that they're questioning any authority they have over their own thoughts or their own decisions or the content that they're consuming. But ultimately, the more you question yourself in this department, the more you become aware of the power external forces have on your internal state. So now we're talking mental, emotional, physical, and also spiritual. But we're getting more into that when we go through the energy aspect. So I've been looking into psychology. Have you ever looked into psychology, and who is leading you in that regard? I'm a Gabor Mate fan myself, so he leads me a lot. What about you? Parenting's a huge one. There's even a famous show. I say famous just because it was on television, but there was a show in Australia that was really popular that got different types of parents. So like the authoritative, etc., the helicopter parent, blah, 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 got them to do their thing and explored and questioned them. And that enabled quite a lot of discussion to happen. But a lot of people aren't aware of the type of parent that they are until they're thrown into the mix. If you're looking into psychology ever, you want to understand the types of parents that you had and the effect that it's had on you as well. But there are also parenting sort of experts. There's relationship experts. There's people that claim to be experts on everything. And it's for you to decide. Just because they call themselves something doesn't mean that they are. You have to decide who you're allowing to lead you and under what criteria are you giving them that authority to lead you and for you to follow them. Maybe you just resonate with what they say, you relate to it, you've experienced it, and it's like they're talking to you directly, or maybe it's just interesting to think about. But can you even name these people? You know what I mean? This is part of the problem. You follow people who might on social media have a name that isn't their own, and you don't really know much about them. You know what I mean? So when it comes to something like health, there's a guy, I think it's called Chris Beat Cancer on Instagram, and he's telling the story about how he beat cancer naturally, I believe. He didn't ever do any chemo or anything like that. I love people like that in health, the health department. I'm also a big fan of the work of Barbara O'Neill, the Australian woman who was sort of booted from health in Australia and then legged it to the US. But again, just because I'm naming doesn't mean I want to direct you along these paths. I'm just giving you examples to show you that I've looked at these things on my own. I'm not going to go into what gave them the authority and credibility because sometimes I think it is kind of obvious. I very much question the medical system, the allopathic system of the Western world. I'm preferably in favor to the Eastern world as much as possible, but I believe a balance is necessary for optimal health. That's just me. In the self-help department, who is your leader? If you're going to say somebody like Mel Robbins, she's a big one. There's also, there's too many to name. But this is the point. Who leads you in terms of like your belief about the self improvement, self-development, self-awareness, all of that kind of, who's leading you? And why are you letting them lead you? Why do you give them the authority to lead you for you to follow them? Now, if we're talking about energy, the algorithm in and of itself becomes a point of discussion. The algorithm is leading you in more ways than you can possibly imagine. It has power over us. Even when you go to just your is it Instagram that primarily feeds you people you follow in your algorithm, but also gives you other things. Celebrities and gossip about celebrities. There was a recent drama between Nicki Minaj and Cardi B. And I mentioned it to my partner because it was popping up all over my algorithm. I wasn't looking for it, but even just listening to it once, told the machine to feed me more. And me telling my partner was kind of in disappointment, shock, disbelief is probably the wrong word, because it's not that I believed it was not going to happen. They're both very wild and out there personalities. But it was the kind of way that they were arguing and the pettiness and immaturity of it, and the fact that these are people that are followed by so many women, especially young women, and they can delete whatever they've said hours later, but it's been like disseminated through the collective consciousness via social media, and it became a point of discussion for so many people. People were just laughing at it like it was entertainment, and I'm like, think of the energy that you're feeding this. And then my partner questioned me, like, why are you telling me? Why do I care? What does this affect life? And I'm just like, well, at the end of the day, how pathetic is it that people with power, not via, political, economical, whatever, it's more like celebrity status, and they're doing this publicly or just doing this at all when they could be giving their attention and sharing their energy towards something that truly matters instead of belittling each other and all of that. But I was like, holy shit, I just got led down this freaking rabbit hole I didn't even want to, because I watched one video and it bloody entertained me enough that I watched it to the point where the algorithm's like, oh, we're going to feed you, sister. And then that was it. I still get things popping up about it. It happened like a week ago. But again, the algorithm and celebrity gossip. Who do you give more weight to? Like, who are the celebrities that you follow? Who leads you? And are you following them because they're good at what they do, or because of who they are, or because of their story? Like Matthew McConaughey for a lot of people. He was a big self-help person too. The energy that you're feeding, who's leading you when it comes to activism. And this is where you get the celebrity side of it. So you got your Jane Fondas and your Greta Thunberg, who I'm a huge fan of, both of them actually, myself personally. But where you're feeding your energy, your attention, and your focus really matters, because that determines who and what is leading you. What a huge difference to my day that I spent the first, I don't even know how long it was. See how you lose concepts of time when it comes to your interaction with social media? I can lose hours on TikTok thinking it is 30 minutes, but I'm a lot more conscious of time when it comes to reading a book. I don't like getting up and getting straight on social media, but that's what I've been continually doing. And I'm like, I'm not going to do this anymore. I don't want to do this anymore. This isn't a great start to my day. So I thought I'm going to mix it up. If consuming content is the way that I work when I wake up, I'm going to try and do it differently. So I started to keep reading The Body Keeps the Score in the morning now. And it just changes the trajectory of my day, that I'm consuming content that is focused on one area. My attention is focused on one area, because I thought, what the hell? No wonder my day can feel all over the place if I start my day scrolling through something like TikTok that's feeding me stuff about a range of different things, and I'm not in control of that algorithm. When you're reading a book, you're in control. So think about the attention and the focus that you give. And who's leading your attention or focus? Is it you, or is it the algorithm? Speaking of energy, because we're in the personal energy situation, who leads your perspective when it comes to the things like chakras? Is that something that you engage yourself in at all? And if not, who leads you into thinking not to? You know what I mean? Mm. Now we're going a little bit outside of that realm. Who leads you in terms of your understanding or perspective of astrology? And if you do explore it, who are the astrologers that you kind of follow? And is it more on a personal, like personal to you note, or is it the kinds of astrologers that talk about, I'm a Taurus, sun anyway. So the people who talk about all Taurus. So if you're Taurus, this is the case for you this week, this day, this month, whatever, this year. Then that's actually the Western side. The Eastern side talks about the year that you were born in terms of your astrology. So who's your leader in that regard, if there is one? And in that category, I'd also put human design, hoping that you've heard of that. If you haven't, that's an interesting thing to look at. That's all about the personal energy system. And then also another level, higher level, I'd say, to both of those things is the gene keys. Richard Rudd, I believe it is. Yeah, he's the leader of the gene keys. He created the gene keys, and I trust what he says because I watched something, actually, him giving a talk, and he decided to choose figures, public figures, and explore their gene keys. And he did Princess Diana. That was the part that I watched intensely because the gene keys were explaining her bigger challenges in life and her coping mechanisms for those challenges, and the proof was in the pudding. But that's just me. What about you? Who's leading you? How are they leading you? Where are they leading you? Why are they leading you? And that's the power strand in a nutshell. Now we're going to go into the foundation strand, and this can be a lot closer to home in terms of the self sphere, or it could be zoomed out and incorporate everyone and look at a more world sphere approach with the planet and the world in the people on it. Or it can just be like a general in the middle of the mix societal perspective. So think about who leads your environments. So social media. Who leads what your environments look like on all of your tech platforms? So Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, and then there's all of those offshoot ones like the Snapchat, the Discord, all of that. Who is the determiner? Who is leading those environments in your life? Because you think you're curating your platforms to reflect you, but I get the shits within minutes if I ever try to look at Facebook outside of just posting. I usually clock out immediately because I'm realizing what I'm being fed is just a lot of crap that I didn't need to see, want to see, care to see. And it's not the people that I know well. You know what I mean? They're not the people closest to me, and I'd rather get that information from them directly rather than see something on social media. So I like to have a more personal environment when I converse with people or discuss with people rather than in text or whatever. So if we look at the other digital platforms, so those environments like Google or Netflix or YouTube, for example, who is leading you? Because it's not you. Even if you put what you want to look at on Google, sometimes the things you want to see are kind of buried and hidden, or they're difficult to find. You don't get to decide what content you're exposed to. And this is part of the problem when this is happening on a global scale with everyone as an individual. You know what I mean? We're not leading ourselves, we're being led. So when it comes to the planet, one of my leaders, David Attenborough, like talking about the planet as a whole, the natural world. Jane Fonda was another great one. But when it comes to the state of the world, Greta Thunberg is a leader for me too. I feel like those two are like grandfather and granddaughter in my opinion anyway. I'm happy for them to lead me. I trust that they're speaking the truth, speaking facts, and I resonate and connect deeply with the things that they say, and their actions match their words. So I'm happy for them to lead me. When it comes to society, though, we're looking at your region of the world all the way down to your specific country. Like, I can't say that Anthony Albanese is my leader. That's part of the problem. I'm not able to choose who I want to lead my country. I am given two choices, technically, but I'm given options to choose who I prefer, but none of them are my leader. Does that make sense? So you're not necessarily leading in your own choices. You're being led to choose within a scope that you didn't determine. We're supposed to be a democratic society here in Australia, and the large majority of the population, large majority makes no sense, the majority of the population fought for even just Palestine to be recognised. There was a huge march over the Harbour Bridge, and then it took so long for the leader of our country to say anything, or he's not doing anything, but to say anything about it. So this goes to show that democracy isn't even leading our country, although my country, even though that's the belief. You know what I mean? So if we're looking at environments, think about your own home as well. Who's the leader in your home? Who leads the decision on where things go, or what's like what furniture is chosen and where it goes? Who's the leader in, now we're talking TV, because you're going, do you watch the mainstream stuff or the free to air stuff? Do you exclusively consume information and content off platforms like all of the streaming services? Because yeah, that has a huge difference in what kind of things you see. You have a lot more choice, we'll say, with the streaming platforms about what it is that you're watching and what content you're exposing yourself to. But then by the same token, if you're looking at free to air television, they're already deciding what's available to you at any given time as well. So you have that autonomy, but within a limited scope, a limited range. When it comes to your relationships, who is your leader? And you've got many different factors when you look at relationships. You've got like parent to child, as in you're the child, you have a parent. And then you also have, if you are a parent, your relationship to your child. Who's the leader in that, but also who is leading your perspective in what you do, when you do it, how you do it? Does that make sense? I try to find a way to heal my relationship with my mother, and anything that psychology sort of offered me didn't seem to have the transformation I wanted it to. That's when I applied the cycle breaking formula that I created in the Web of Life philosophy, and I thought the true test of its success is if I can change a cycle in a relationship with someone else unbeknownst to them that I'm doing it. If I could use this formula and break the cycle that was pre-existing and create a new one in its place, then I can say it works. And I did that with my mother. So I led myself in terms of that relationship, but she largely led the creation of those cycles that were negative that I lived in with her for so long. And she was leading things as the parent. And it wasn't until I sort of took control of the relationship that things were able to shift. So you've got who is the leader in terms of like the power dynamic, or I suppose you could say, in a relationship between two people, whatever the nature is of that relationship. But then you've also got the leader of the information that is determining your perspective on it. Does that make sense? So it's probably a better example to consider who's leading you in terms of your partner and you. Whatever the orientation, the sexual orientation is in that relationship, whether it's two men, two women, male and female, whatever, the masculine and the feminine energy in whatever form that takes. Who is leading your perspective of the dynamics of that partnership? So that person on social media, that Sadia psychology, or there's like the Andrew Tate, you know what I mean, perspective, and there's multiple of them, but he is also like a leader in many ways. Not that I believe he deserves to be. There's also Jordan Peterson. There's a few bigger names that you might be consuming the content on, whether you agree or not. You're consuming the content. It is a perspective that you're agreeing with, or you're questioning your own with, or you're just disagreeing with or challenging completely. but you're being led into I didn't want Andrew Tate content in my life. I'll be honest with you. It was only because of conversations that I was having with a guy I went to high school with that he'd love to be his apprentice. Let's put it that way. And it was like, as soon as I started discussing him on like text and voice notes or whatever on Instagram, all of a sudden I'm getting all this crap about Andrew Tate, and he's sending me little clips of videos. So it wasn't like I really led myself into that. I was led into that, and I just didn't even think about what I was doing to my algorithm, let alone myself. So I was exposed to far more of his stuff than I ever wanted to know. And I don't agree with him, but he definitely led me to think certain things or consider those perspectives before I decided, hell no, that doesn't make sense. Or I just disagreed with him on impact because emotionally it challenged me to my core. But you've also got the sibling dynamic. Where are you getting your information or your understanding on how that looked in the past or how that looks in the present? Friendships as well. You might get like little reels and little clips and things like that saying things about friendship, but you don't think about who it is. You just take the content at face value. And there's danger in that as well, because it might just be like a little snippet of a point and you're not thinking about it outside of that, and you just agree on the spot and you're being led to think something without really thinking for yourself about it in depth. It's not that what they're saying is not legitimate and accurate and relatable, but there might be more to it than meets the eye. Does that make sense? Then you've got your relationships with people in the physical, like when you see someone in person versus the digital. There's a little group of girls, ladies, women that I went to university with when we did our teaching degrees, and we made a little friendship. It's a very different thing when we saw each other in person a few months ago and caught up basically for hours and hours on end. Whole different energetic ball game, whole different environmental ball game, but the relationship changes. It's so much more in depth, and it's so much more energetic when it is physical, as opposed to how we primarily operate, which is digitally with voice notes or text or a group chat kind of thing. So you've got to consider who's leading you in that. Yes, time might be getting or stopping you from being able to catch up, or just, all the other stuff going on in life. But the kind of relationship that you have digitally is not necessarily the one that you'll have physically. So which one is leading you? Because it's definitely the digital world for most of my relationships outside of my partner who I live with, and my family who I primarily connect with in person. That's the saddest part. We have so many digital relationships with people, whereas when I grew up, that didn't exist. It was all physical, and it's a whole different ballgame energetically, environmentally, and relationshipally. Okay, we're going to finish with the foundational strand because that can just make me sad. And now, finally, we'll go into the super strand. So we're talking childhood and we're talking experiences. So childhood we'll start with, because you have your childhood, which you are by far not in anymore, but you might look back. Often with the cycles in our lives, they go back to childhood and childhood experiences. So whether you've sought to understand your childhood, understand its effect on you, not just psychologically and like the mental and emotional components of psychology, which then determine your physical output, your behavior, your characteristics, that side of thing, but also how your childhood has influenced your beliefs, determined your personal history and the stories that you tell about yourself, the kinds of environments that you live in or inhabit or experience, also the relationships and the type of relationships that you have as well. But have you looked into the science of the childhood that you lived or that people live in general? Have you looked into childhood? The ACE scores, the adverse childhood events, have you ever looked into yours to understand where you stand in terms of the average US population? Because I think that's where all the stats come from on that. But who leads your perspective on the science of the effects of childhood and childhood experiences? Is it anecdotal, like people that you meet? That's how I come up with a lot of the Web of Life stuff, because if I created it just purely based on myself, like what reference do I have? It was anecdotal evidence that I was accumulating throughout the course of my life, talking to different people and hearing that it didn't matter what culture, what religion, what race, ethnicity, gender, the same cycles were being repeated in childhood that created these long lasting cycles that people are stuck in adulthood and don't know how to break. Um, but you may also have got information from books, and who wrote those books, who is the leader of your thinking and your exploration. By the same token, it might be people on YouTube. It could be individual studies that you looked at, which it's really difficult to recall the sometimes 6 or 7 different scientists and individuals that wrote a paper. But even just being aware of the study itself or the background of it, the what's often in the abstract and telling you how they got into that, especially looking at the childhood stuff as well, because they say people are not looking out of their own interests, they're looking to understand themselves personally as well. Are there influences that talk about childhood? And for the moment, I'm going to zoom out of your own and let's zoom into the childhood of the people that you create or the people whose lives that you're in. I help shape the childhoods of the students that I taught when I was a teacher, albeit for a short period of time, but it was such a heavy influence because statistically I had them for majority of their life for the year that I taught them. So I was influencing people's childhoods, people who are now adults, legally adults anyway. Mentally, I don't know. I don't know what's going on with that generation, but who are the influences to influence your understanding of being a parent and influencing a child? And think of the kinds of content and the information that's leading you into the perspective that you have, because it might not be one individual or a group of individuals that you can name and you know their credentials. It might just be you Google parenting hacks on social media and get a plethora of people who you may never see again, or you might follow and they pop up sometimes on your algorithm, or you might explicitly does not make sense, explicitly follow someone who's created a book and then you started reading their book. I'm just realizing I'm pushing the hour now, and I'm sorry, this is longer than I wanted it to be, but this is the whole point. I haven't made this list exhaustive, and there's so much to consider, and it's very rare that you are at the forefront of self-leadership in terms of what you consume, where you consume it, how you consume it. Eey. Okay, so you also might have a therapist or a psychologist who influence your perspective of your own childhood, or I've also known quite a few people who go into therapy or psychology primarily to improve their chances of not repeating cycles when they become parents. So just before or during their pregnancy sort of thing, they'll start looking into their past and delving into it as a means to not repeat it for their own children. And so some of the information that you're believing is based off what they've said. But again, you also don't know who led them and when they were led. They might have some information that they received at university that they're sharing with you. And then if their course of professional development had given them more up-to-date information and they were better self-led to then be led by more immediate results, you'd then get different information, if that makes sense. But we don't question all of this. This is part of the issue. And so if we're looking at experiences, I'm curious if you know who leads your experiences. For me, it's less of a who and more of a what. When it's not me deciding I'm going to go for a walk, me deciding I'm going to go to the gym, me deciding to go to the beach, to catch up with a friend, to go for a drive to the shops, whatever the thing is, when it becomes a digital conversation, as in a conversation about the digital world, I do not lead my experience. I do not lead what the algorithm feeds me as much as I want to believe that I do. Even if I go to who I follow explicitly, like on TikTok, go to the follow instead of the for you, you don't decide what you're going to see, what you're going to hear, what you're going to think, what you're going to be challenged by. You don't decide this. And the only way you can lead yourself is to get off the digital platforms and to check out of the digital world, which I have not been able to do. I haven't tried. That's part of the problem. But I do know people that have. Who leads your experiences? Now we're getting into the physical world. If you have children, who is the leader? A lot of people will say the kids, and a lot of fathers will say the daughters. This is part of the interesting discussion around leadership, because it's not just about power and authority, it's decision making, but it's also who's presenting the experience that the decision needs to be made about. It won't necessarily be the parent all the time. Kids come up with a lot more stuff, but also your family experiences, the places that you go, the things that you do. And I couldn't believe it. There was not one section of the 8 fundamental elements. So no element did social media not come into play. And I couldn't believe that. I honestly thought experiences, we could just be purely physical. But then I thought, hang on a minute. Nope. I watched a social media thing, and it was promoting, there's different names for it, but this Pinot and Picasso situation. So it's like having a drink and doing some art in one hit. And I thought, what a great experience. And that's what I wanted to start doing with my nonna, so my mum's mum, and my mother and I. So for Mother's Day, one day we went to a high tea. I found that online, like that place for where I was at the time. So I found a close location that did something fancy, and we did that instead of just a typical lunch or whatever. And then social media suggested doing something like this with friends. And I thought, that's something different that I know my mother and my grandmother would likely not have done, if not before, but with each other. So we went to one close to where I am now. But again, I was led into an experience by someone I had never met. I cannot recall, but it was a good experience because we made it a good experience. So again, the algorithm is leading so many of my experiences, and this is part of the problem. There's this lack of self-control, and I do mean that both in the literal, more typical sense, that the self-control, like how much time passes when you're on social media unbeknownst to you. And there was that famous neuroscientist, Tara something or other. She was saying she puts a timer on herself for social media, which has really helped. And I thought, great idea. But I was led into the thought, but did I actually execute? No. Lack of self-control. So there's that aspect of it. But it's also that we are overwhelmingly not in control. We do not have that self-governance and self-leadership due to this heavy influence of external stimulus. And in this regard, it's overwhelmingly the digital media stuff, just the digital world, digital content, digital creators. Oy. So all I'm asking for this app, just consider how much it's not you leading you. Oh, it hurts to say it out loud because I have exhibited that truth within myself for this app. But I'd also like you to develop your awareness of the leadership and the self versus the rest. Next time you're scrolling social media, consider who it is that's giving you a perspective and how much authority and credibility you're giving to it. Are you taking it at face value? Do you let their opinion or their perspective or their story become the truth for you immediately, without question, without exploration? And why? Is it because you agree with it, resonate with it, relate to it? I don't want to give too many other examples from my own personal experience because I don't want to lead you. That's the whole point. So who is the ultimate leader of you? I'm fucking pissed off to admit this. It's the fucking algorithm. In the digital space anyway. And I want to try and improve the percentage of time I'm spending just being physical in the physical world without digital interference. Because, oh my God, it's everywhere. It's everywhere and it's constant. I don't know about you, but that's how I feel anyway. So, if you'd like to actually see the web of life that I've been talking about and you've not seen it yourself before, just head to www.weboflife.au and you can download the complete Web of Life philosophy for free. So it's not just the Web of Life. You'll see the 3 spheres. This is all digital representations. They're all visual images for you to understand the information. But you'll also get to understand the formation of a cycle and the formula to break a cycle. While you're there, you can get your copy of the book, Detangling the Web of Life, The Complete Guide to Understanding You and Everyone Else by yours truly. And coming soon, you'll have the complete online course for you to detangle your own web of life, and the first three modules will be completely for free. So thanks for being here with us for this ep. New ones will come out to you. Usually it's every other Thursday, but if it's a big sort of concept, I'm spending a little bit more time on it, so it'll come out once a month. But in the meantime, I want you to keep developing your awareness of yourself, those around you, and the things influencing you. So much love for you, people. Take it easy. See you soon.